You know that feeling, that absolute avalanche of information hitting you from every direction. Articles, reports, emails, meetings. It's enough to make your head spin
Oh,
sometimes.
absolutely. It's like the defining challenge these days, isn't it?
Totally. How do you possibly cut through all that noise, get genuinely informed, and figure out what really matters for tackling, complex organizational challenges?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. The sheer volume makes it incredibly tough to spot the truly critical insights, the structured approaches you need for effective change, especially in areas like, say, technology governance.
Exactly. And that's precisely our mission here on the Deep Dive. We take a stack of targeted sources, expert guides, research papers, deep analyses, the kind of stuff you need to understand to be well informed, but maybe don't have, the dozens of hours to dissect yourself.
Right, so we act as your guides. We pull out the key concepts, the surprising bits, the practical takeaways.
And frame it all in a way that hopefully gives you those aha moments and just makes sense fast.
Think of this as maybe a shortcut to understanding the core mechanics, the structured thinking inside some really crucial documents. We're going to walk through the material together, kind of like instructors guiding you through a complex subject.
Making sure you grasp the most important nuggets.
Exactly.
And today, we're tackling a very structured, pretty expert source. It provides a practical roadmap for, well, a really critical organizational task. We are deep diving into the nuts and bolts of how organizations actually implement better governance for their information and technology, or INT as they call it.
Right, and our source is the COBIT 2019 Implementation Guide from ISACA.
ISAP, they're pretty well known in this space.
Oh yeah, globally respected.
Yeah.
They focus on areas like information security, governance, assurance, risk, innovation, all that critical stuff. And COBIT itself is their widely recognized framework for what they call enterprise governance of INT, e.g.
OBG, okay.
And this specific guide, the implementation guide, it's designed precisely to help organizations take those EGI principles and actually turn them into reality. It's detailed, expert-driven, very structured, based on a lot of research and real-world experience about what works and what doesn't when you try to implement this stuff.
So not just theory, this is about the how-to, a practical roadmap.
That's the idea.
And specifically for this deep dive, we're going to unpack two key parts of this guide. First, Chapter 6, which lays out a really crucial 7-phase life cycle for implementation.
The core process.
Exactly. And second, Appendix A, which gives us a practical example, a look at how those kind of abstract ideas about roles and responsibilities actually get translated into concrete decision-making. Who does what?
Which is often where things get tricky in practice.
Totally. So our mission today is to guide you through that structured approach to EGI implementation phase by phase. We'll explore the critical tasks in each and, importantly, try to clarify who is typically responsible for what, according to the guide.
Using its insights and examples as our map. Stepping into that instructor role, helping you navigate these core components of this, well, foundational guide.
Okay, sounds good. Let's start our exploration then with Chapter 6, the implementation life cycle.
All right, let's unpack this. Chapter 6 introduces, really, the core concept, a 7-phase life cycle. And it's designed not just for implementing EG, but for its continual improvement.
Continual improvement. That's important, not a one-and-done thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The guide makes it really clear this is cyclical, it's iterative, it's not some project with a definite end where you just declare victory and walk away.
That makes sense. Governance needs to evolve, right? Things change.
Constantly. And the guide structures this whole process by providing a lot of support for each phase.
Like what kind of support?
Well, for each of the 7 phases, you get detailed charts breaking down roles and responsibilities for different groups, from the board right down to operational managers. You get tables outlining specific tasks within 3 supporting disciplines that run to the whole thing. Continual improvement, or CI. Change enablement, CE. That's the people side.
Right, human element.
Crucial.
Right.
And program management, PM, for managing the whole effort. And maybe most practically, you get RACI charts.
Ah, RACI. Responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. Classic.
Exactly. They spell out who's who for the most important activities in each phase.
So it gives you the what to do, the tasks, the how to manage it, PM, the how to handle the people stuff, CE,
Yeah.
and the who does what, RACI. That sounds incredibly comprehensive.
It is pretty thorough. But, and this is important, the source really emphasizes that this is a guide. It's not meant to be a rigid, prescriptive set of instructions you follow blindly.
So you have to adapt it.
Absolutely. The guide says you must adapt the generic plan to fit your specific enterprise, your context, your environment, your current level of governance maturity, the actual scope of what you're trying to implement. All that matters. It's about good practices, not a strict formula.
And it works together with the COBIT design guide, right?
Yeah.
Especially early on.
It's exactly right. Think of them as companion guides. The design guide helps you figure out what your tailored EG-Kai system should look like. It uses things called design factors, like your strategy, your risk profile, how important IT is for you, current problems.
Okay, so the design guide helps you decide what to build.
Right. And once you know what you need, the implementation guide tells you how to actually build it, refine it, and keep improving it. It even points you back to the design guide in the first few phases for more detail on certain assessment tasks.
Got it. Design guide for the what, implementation guide for the how and who. So why bother with such a structured life cycle anyway? Why not just, try to improve things as you go?
Well, it's interesting. The guide actually explains why this structure is needed by pointing out common failures.
Learning from mistakes.
Pretty much. A major reason EGIT implementations fail is because they aren't managed properly as formal programs. You need clear executive sponsorship, a defined scope, achievable objectives. Without that program structure, it's really hard to make sure you get the benefits you expect, and crucially, that the changes actually stick, that they get absorbed and sustained.
So it's way more than just an IT project, like installing new software.
Fundamentally, yes. The guide frames it as part of enterprise governance, covering business and IT end-to-end. The goal isn't just finishing a project, it's establishing a new, normal, sustainable way of doing business when it comes to governing and managing INT.
Making it business as usual.
Exactly. This life cycle approach is designed to empower stakeholders, business and IT, to take real ownership. The program isn't really done until the new processes are delivering measurable benefits and are just part of how the organization operates day to day.
That really resonates. You need that structure to handle the complexity and make sure the change becomes part of the, organizational DNA.
Okay, let's dive into these 7 phases then. Phase 1. What are the drivers?
Right, phase 1, the critical kickoff. The objective here is to clearly identify the reasons why you're doing this, what the guide calls the internal and external change drivers.
So what's pushing you to change?
Exactly. Could be new regulations, market shifts, competitors doing something new, or internal stuff like performance gaps, processes not working, strategic goals needing better INT support. But crucially, this phase is also about building the desire for change at the executive level.
The buy-in.
Absolutely critical. It all leads to an outlined business case and getting that genuine commitment, especially from senior leadership. Honestly, without that top-level desire and formal backing, the whole thing might be dead in the water before it even starts.
Makes sense. So the continual improvement, the CI tasks in this phase, they're basically about figuring out and articulating that need to act. Precisely. CI in phase 1 is about understanding the why, digging into the enterprise strategy, key goals, the overall risk profile, and really understanding the current INT-related issues or pain points. What's actually hurting?
And the guide connects this back to the design guide steps.
It does. It explicitly links these tasks to the first few steps in the design guide's workflow, which give you more detail on how to do these initial assessments and define the scope.
Okay. And the change enablement, the CE tasks, that's starting on the human side, establishing that desire to change.
Yes, and CE here is absolutely vital for laying the groundwork. Tasks include things like making sure this effort aligns with any other big change programs happening in the company. You don't want conflicts.
A good point. Avoid change fatigue or crossed wires.
Exactly. You also need to analyze the organizational environment itself. The structure, the culture. Is it receptive to change or resistant? What are the key relationships? Attitudes towards IT and governance. Dependencies with other initiatives. You need to understand the landscape you're stepping into.
That culture piece sounds tricky, but so important. And you mentioned stakeholder analysis earlier. Where does that fit in phase 1?
Core CE task, right here. It's vital. You systematically identify everyone who has a stake in this. Across different business units, IT, audit, risk, legal, maybe others. And at different levels, execs, middle management, maybe even key operational folks.
So map out who matters.
And for each one, figure out what level of support do you need from them? How much influence do they have, positive or negative? How will this change impact them? And crucially, are they ready and able to actually participate or adapt?
Wow, that's detailed. Basically, who do you need on side and what will it take? The source also mentions using a wake-up call. What's that about?
Yeah, that's a powerful idea. It ties back to those pain points and triggers we mentioned. It's about using real-world problems, maybe friction between business and IT, a big security breach, compliance failures, costly project overruns, missed opportunities because IT wasn't flexible enough.
The stuff that really hurts.
Exactly. You use those tangible issues to create awareness and highlight why change is necessary, not just nice to have. The INT governance board or senior leaders need to deliver this message, explain the drivers the goals.
Like shaking people out of complacency.
Precisely. You might use hard data compliance, audit failures, project budget blowouts, security incident cost to show the real cost of not changing and build that sense of urgency.
Right, framing it as solving real business problems. Okay, what about program management, PM, in phase 1?
PM tasks here focus on formally initiating the program, setting the high-level direction, defining objectives ideally agreed with the INT governance board or execs. Defining and assigning key high-level roles is crucial.
Like the executive sponsor.
Absolutely paramount. And the program manager who will run it day to day, identifying other key stakeholders for steering. A fundamental PM task is developing that outline business case, the why, potential benefits, and even initial thoughts on how you'll measure success later.
And getting that official sponsorship.
Yes, the capstone task, formalizing the executive sponsorship, getting that visible official backing. It gives the program authority and helps secure resources.
Okay, so inputs are things like pain points, triggers, strategy documents. Outputs are the outline business case, high-level roles defined, stakeholder map, initial communications.
That's a good summary. Those are the essentials you need agreed upon before you move to assessment.
And the RTI charts for phase 1, what do they tell us about who's typically accountable or responsible?
This is where it gets concrete. The examples show activities like identify issues triggering a need to act, identify business priorities affecting IT, and instill urgency. For these, you often see the INT governance board, executive management, or even the main board as accountable A or responsible R.
So right at the top.
Definitely. IT management is involved often as R or consulted C, but the accountability is higher up. Producing the outline business case. Often the program steering committee or INT governance board is accountable, with execs, IT, maybe others as responsible or consulted.
That distribution is telling. It's not just IT's job. Getting agreement, building urgency. The initial case accountability sits with leadership, often cross-functional.
Exactly. The insight is that for EG to work, the drive and ownership have to come from the business, enabled by IT, not the other way around. It's a business necessity.
Yeah, that makes sense. So connecting this back to you, the listener, phase 1 is really about answering those fundamental questions. Why do we really need to change how we govern INT? And who are the key leaders who must champion this? It grounds the whole thing in business reality and secures that crucial top-level commitment.
It lays the essential political and strategic foundation. Without it, you're building on sand.
Okay, foundation laid. Drivers and sponsorships sorted. Now we move into phase 2. Where are we now?
Right. Phase 2 shifts gears completely. It's all about understanding the current state. How is INT actually supporting the business goals right now? How is it delivering value? Exactly. Identify the critical processes, structures, information flows, the culture, skills. COBIT calls these the enablers that are involved in governing and managing INT today. Understanding the current INT risk situation. And very specifically, assessing the current capability level of the key processes or components you decided were in scope back in phase 1.
Okay, getting a deep, honest, data-driven picture. So the continual improvement tasks, the CI part, is centered on that assessing current state.
Yes. CI is the engine for this assessment. It means understanding how INT currently links to enterprise goals. That's COBIT's goals cascade idea. Measuring actual performance against relevant metrics are processes delivering what they should.
Using COBIT's performance management concepts.
Right. You need to define how you'll assess what method will you use. Documenting how current governance components work. Analyzing current capability levels of key processes, again, often pointing back to the design guide for how to do capability assessments. And defining those current capability ratings or performance levels.
Let's pause on capability levels and enablers for a sec. They sound like core COBIT terms. What exactly are capability levels? Why assess them?
Good question. Capability levels in COBIT basically measure the maturity of a process or component. Think of a scale, usually 0 to 5. 0 means incomplete, maybe chaotic. 5 means fully optimized, always improving. It's not just if you do something, but how well you do it. Is it repeatable, defined, managed, measured? optimized.
So it quantifies maturity.
Exactly. It gives you a standard way to assess how consistently and effectively you're performing key activities. Very useful for identifying gaps later.
Got it. And enablers.
Enablers are the building blocks of your governance system. COBIT defines 7 categories: processes, organizational structures, culture, ethics, behavior, information, services, infrastructure, and applications, people, skills and competencies, and principles, policies, and frameworks.
Wow, that's broad.
It covers everything. In Phase 2, you're assessing the current state of the relevant enablers for your scope. How good are our processes? What are the structures? What's the culture around risk? Understanding these is crucial because change often involves improving one or more of these enablers.
That helps a lot. So assessing capability and the state of these enablers gives you that data-driven picture. Now, how does change enablement, CE, fit into Phase 2?
CE in Phase 2 is laser-focused on forming a powerful implementation team. This is where you assemble the core group who will drive this whole thing forward.
The A-team.
Kind of, yeah. And the guide is really strong on this. It needs to be a mix of business and IT people. They need the right knowledge, experience, credibility, but also, critically, enough authority to actually influence things and make change happen across different silos.
Authority, right. Knowledge isn't enough if you can't get people to listen or act.
Precisely. Influence is key. The guide even suggests maybe bringing in external folks, consultants, change agents for objectivity or special skills, or just to navigate internal politics.
Interesting. And managing vested interests.
Vital at this stage. Identify them, manage them, build trust, make sure the team has the time, resources, and backing to do the job properly. That's crucial.
And then bring them together physically or virtually?
Well, the guide recommends a dedicated workshop. Get the core team together, build consensus, create a shared vision, and really solidify their mandate and authority.
Get everyone on the same page.
Exactly. Another key CE task here is identifying cascading sponsors. These are change agents at different levels in the organization, maybe within specific departments.
A network of advocates?
Sort of. They work with the core team to spread the message, communicate progress, highlight wins, and importantly, address resistance or cynicism on the ground as things move forward.
Smart. And you use the assessment findings in CE, too.
Definitely. While the data feeds CI, CE actively looks for and documents the strengths found during the assessment. These aren't just interesting facts, they're assets for positive communication. They help counter negativity and can point towards potential quick wins areas where you're already good and can get an easy victory.
Nice. So assess the current state with data and build the human team and network. What about program management in Phase 2?
PM here pivots to defining problems and opportunities. Based on that detailed current state assessment, the team and leadership review the outlined business case from Phase 1.
Reality check time.
Pretty much. Does it still hold up? Is it feasible? What's the refined ROI or benefit potential? They formalize roles, responsibilities, process ownership based on what they found and what's needed. Get commitment from stakeholders who will own things, and refine the specific challenges and success factors for the program.
Okay, so inputs. Outline business case, stakeholder map, org info, the current state assessments. Outputs. Refine goals, current capability performance levels, risk assessments, identified strengths, the core team formed, and the evaluated, possibly updated business case.
That nails it. You've got the facts, validated the initial plan against reality, and built a dedicated team.
And the RCI examples for Phase 2, who's typically holding the bag?
Well, for things like identify key IT goals supporting business goals, assess current performance, document current governance, and review the business case, you often see the INT Governance Board or the Program Steering Committee as accountable.
Still leadership level.
Yes, but IT management and business execs or process owners are frequently responsible for doing the actual assessment work and providing input, or they're consulted. Shows that shared effort. Assembling the core team itself. Typically, the program steering committee or exec management is accountable for that crucial step.
Again, joint ownership. Assessing the asses and validating the why needs both business and IT perspectives. The insight seems to be that you can't get an accurate picture without bringing diverse knowledge together.
Absolutely. You need both sides contributing their expertise and experience.
So for you, the listener, Phase 2 is about that crucial, honest look in the mirror, getting a clear, data-driven where are we now, using concepts like capability levels and enablers, and forming that dedicated cross-functional team with the clout to drive change. It's the essential reality check before you start dreaming about the future.
It is the factual foundation and the human engine for what comes next.
Which naturally leads us to phase 3. Where do we want to be?
Exactly. Phase 3 is where you define the vision. The objective is to figure out the desired or target capability and performance levels for those governance components you looked at in phase 2.
Setting the goalposts.
Right. Then you compare the where are we now, phase 2, with the where we want to be, phase 3, to identify the gaps, what needs to change. Then you analyze potential solutions remedies to close those gaps and develop a preliminary plan or roadmap. And all this feeds into an updated, more detailed business case.
Okay, so after assessing reality, you define the aspiration. The continual improvement tasks in phase 3 focus on building the target state.
Yes. CI here involves understanding the required I&T support needed for the enterprise goals, refining that goals cascade. Then, determining the target capability levels you're aiming for. What level of maturity do key processes need to reach?
Using those COPIC capability scales again.
Precisely. Deciding what's good enough or necessary for your context. You also define target performance levels for other components. Maybe efficiency metrics, effectiveness measures for structures or information practices. Then comes the gap analysis. Where exactly do we fall short?
Current versus target.
Right. Then analyzing potential remedies. How can we close these gaps, explore different ways to improve processes, change structures, build skills, whatever's needed, and based on that, develop a preliminary improvement plan or roadmap. This should include prioritizing potential quick wins early on and thinking about feasibility. And importantly, considering the change enablement needed for these remedies to actually work.
So sketching out solutions, the path, and even starting to think about the people side of making it happen. How does change enablement specifically fit into defining this target state?
CE in phase 3 is all about communicating outcome and use. While CI defines the target in technical terms, CE focuses on communicating that future vision in human and behavioral terms.
What will it feel like?
Exactly. How will people's jobs change? What new ways of working, thinking, or interacting will be required? Communicating this effectively is crucial for getting buy-in.
Absolutely vital. How do you do that?
You need to clearly communicate the why, the rationale, and the benefits. The guide mentions a 4PS framework often used in change management. Purpose, why change? Picture, what's the future like? Plan, how we'll get there. And part, what's your role?
Purpose, picture, plan, part. That sounds useful.
It is. And getting senior management and those cascading sponsors to deliver these key messages adds huge credibility. Importantly, it needs to be two-way communication. Get feedback, address concerns, listen.
Make the vision relatable and get people involved. Okay, what about program management tasks in phase 3?
PM is squarely focused on defining the roadmap for the whole program, refining the direction, scope, benefits, objectives based on that target state, making sure it all aligns with business and IT strategies.
Checking for alignment.
Yes. Considering risks in the roadmap, adjusting scope if needed, explicitly factoring in the change enablement implications, getting the budget approved based on this preliminary plan, finalizing accountabilities, and the big one, creating and evaluating a detailed business case.
More detailed than the outline in phase 1.
Significantly.
Right.
This one quantifies the investment, gives more precise timelines, includes a proper high-level program plan with the identified projects and change activities. It's the full justification.
Right, so inputs. Current state info, risk assessments, team info, evaluated outline business case. Outputs, the defined target state with capability performance targets, gaps and remedies identified, preliminary improvement plan roadmap, the updated detailed business case, and initial objectives for the change enablement plan.
That sums it up nicely. You've gone from assessment to defining the solution and creating a validated, detailed plan and justification.
And the RCI examples for phase 3, accountability still high up.
Generally, yes. Activities like set target capability, prioritize gaps, communicate outcome, and use the vision, define the roadmap, and create detailed business case. Accountability often sits with the I&T governance board or the program steering committee.
But others are involved.
Heavily. Business execs and process owners are often responsible, for defining business needs and outcomes, or consulted C on targets and priorities. IT management is typically responsible for defining target IT capabilities and consulted on feasibility.
Again, that mix. Strategic direction and investment owned at the top, but requires deep input from both business and IT to ensure the target is right and achievable.
Precisely. It brings together the business need, technical possibility, and organizational reality.
So for you, the listener, phase 3 is about setting the destination, defining what success looks like in practical terms, your target state, getting agreement on that vision and the path forward, all captured and justified in that crucial detailed business case, moving from assessment to validated intention.
It's designing the blueprint and securing the funding before you start construction.
Okay, blueprint ready. Now we move to phase 4, what needs to be done?
Phase 4. This is the critical transition from high-level planning to detailed prep for execution. The objective is to prioritize the improvements identified in Phase 3, formalize them into actual, justifiable projects with plans, figure out the real enterprise impact, prepare a practical, detailed change plan, and define the specific metrics for program success.
Right, translating the what and where into the how and when and making it actionable. The continual improvement tasks focus on designing and building improvement.
Correct. CI takes those potential remedies from Phase 3 and evaluates them. What's the potential benefit? How easy is it to implement? Cost, effort, sustainability. The guide suggests using an opportunity grid, basically plotting benefit versus ease.
A classic prioritization matrix.
Exactly. Helps you spot the priorities. High benefit, high ease. Those are often your quick wins. High benefit, low ease. Maybe break those down into smaller pieces.
Makes sense.
Then you formally prioritize and select the improvements that become your projects. For each one, you define it properly. Approach, deliverables, resources needed, people, budget, tech, costs, timelines, dependencies, risks. And crucially, link it back to the original drivers from Phase 1. Why are we doing this specific project?
Ensure it still serves the purpose.
Right. Agree on the final project list for the program, referencing the detailed business case, and maybe keep a list of good ideas that didn't make the cut this time, for later.
Okay, building the project portfolio. And change enablement in Phase 4, what's the focus?
CE here is intensely focused on empowering role players and identifying quick wins, getting buy-in from the people who will be affected, engaging them directly, workshops, reviews, discussions.
Getting them involved in the planning.
Yes. A huge task here is designing the detailed change response plans. These proactively manage the impacts of the projects. How do we maximize engagement, minimize resistance? This could involve formal organizational changes, job roles, team structures, and significant people management changes, training programs, updated performance criteria, maybe even changing incentives to match the new ways of working.
Aligning rewards with the desired behavior.
Crucial. And identifying quick wins is still a big CE focus here.
But making sure they're visible.
Visible and unambiguous. You need successes people can see and easily understand early in the execution phase. It builds momentum, builds credibility, counters skepticism. Show, don't just tell.
Good advice.
The guide suggests building on strengths identified back in Phase 2 for these wins, and leveraging existing enterprise processes, maybe strong project management elsewhere, established training teams, good communication channels. Don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to.
Smart. Leverage what works. Okay, program management ties this all together in Phase 4.
PM is all about planning the program comprehensively, finalizing the scope based on the chosen projects, sequencing and prioritizing them, using the business case, managing dependencies, making sure this program fits with other initiatives across the enterprise, avoid resource clashes.
Portfolio management view.
Exactly. Securing resources, confirming budget, assigning project managers, teams, integrating all the project plans into one master program plan, maybe a Gantt chart or roadmap, setting up how you'll monitor progress, and crucially, integrating that detailed change enablement plan into the main program plan.
So change activities run alongside project work, not after.
That's the ideal, yes. Not an afterthought, and continuing to actively manage program risks and issues.
Okay. Inputs. Target state, improvement ideas, risk responses, CE objectives, detailed business case. Outputs. Prioritize project definitions, detailed change plans, identified quick wins, the integrated program project plan, and define success metrics.
Correct. You've now got your detailed what needs to be done list and a comprehensive integrated plan for how we're going to do it, including the critical people side.
An RCI for Phase 4. Who's accountable for turning strategy into these detailed plans?
Well, for prioritized improvements, design and build improvements, defining the projects, obtain buy-in, design change plans, and plan the program itself. You usually see the Program Steering Committee, or INT Governance Board, as accountable A.
Still leadership driving.
Yes, but IT management and business process owners are often responsible for designing the technical solutions and the change plans for their areas, maybe with help from HR or comms. Project managers are responsible for the specific project plans.
So, shared responsibility for the practical design and planning, distributed to the relevant parts of the org, but overall accountability stays with program leadership.
Right. It shifts from strategic definition to concrete, cross-functional planning for the actual implementation.
So, listener, phase 4 is that critical bridge from strategy to action, translating the what target state into the how projects changes and nailing down those vital quick wins to keep everyone motivated. It's the detailed blueprint before construction starts.
It's the final planning push before the real heavy lifting begins.
Which smoothly brings us to phase 5. How do we get there?
Phase 5. This is typically the main execution phase. Often takes the most effort, resources, time. The objective is simple on paper. Implement the projects defined in Phase 4. Execute the change activities. The guide assumes you'll use your existing enterprise project management capabilities, and you're constantly monitoring progress.
The core doing phase. What are the continual improvement tasks during execution?
CI tasks are all about implementing improvements. It's the core project work. Developing or acquiring the solutions planned in Phase 4, new processes, tools, structures, adopting and adapting good practices as you go. Critically, testing the solutions thoroughly. Do they work? Do they meet requirements? And then rolling them out into the live environment.
Standard project stuff, but change enablement is heavily involved throughout phase 5.
Oh, absolutely. This is where CE is probably most active and visible. The focus is on enabling operation and use, building momentum with those quick wins, highlighting their success, introducing the broader, maybe tougher, changes from the detailed plan.
Celebrating success.
Definitely. Communicate quick win successes, recognize and reward people involved. That reinforces the positive side. You're actively implementing the detailed change response plans from Phase 4, delivering training, facilitating new ways of working, supporting people through the transition.
Ensuring everyone's ready and supported seems key here.
It's the heart of CE in Phase 5, ensuring the broad base of people affected have the skills, resources, knowledge, and importantly, the ongoing buy-in and commitment to work effectively in the new way. The guide mentions balancing group things, like workshops with individual support, like coaching.
Tailoring the approach.
Right, explicitly planning for and addressing the cultural and behavioral side. People's fears, new expectations, helping them adapt, clearly communicating the new roles and responsibilities for when things become business as usual.
How do you know if the people side is working during execution? How do you measure that?
Good question. You define success measures that explicitly include perception measures. Not just hard metrics, but how are people experiencing the change? Pulse surveys, focus groups, feedback sessions. Do they feel supported, capable?
Gauging the human reaction.
Exactly. Setting up mentoring or coaching can help ensure people actually use the new stuff effectively. And you continuously monitor change enablement effectiveness. Are the change requirements being met? If not, take corrective action, maybe revise training, provide more support.
So managing the people transition just as actively as the technical project. What about program management oversight during Phase 5?
PM is about executing the plan and maintaining control, making sure execution follows the integrated plan, actively directing and monitoring all the projects, schedule, budget, outcomes. Are they contributing to the overall program goals?
Keeping things on track.
Yes. Regular, transparent updates to stakeholders are crucial. Documenting and monitoring significant program risks and issues as they pop up, agreeing on fixes. The Program Steering Committee, or INT Governance Board, will likely need to approve major phase initiations or significant changes to the plan.
Okay. Inputs. Project definitions, change plans, quick wins, integrated plan, success metrics, outputs, implemented improvements, executed change plans, visible quick wins, success communications, defined BAU roles, project logs, and measures for both business results and perception.
That's a comprehensive set. This is where plans become reality and you start seeing tangible results, both solutions implemented and people starting to adopt new ways.
At RCI for Phase 5, who's doing the doing?
In execution, activities like develop wire solutions, test and roll out, adopt good practices, implement change plans. You often see IT management and business process owners as responsible. They're doing the core work. The Program Steering Committee, or INT Governance Board, usually stays accountable overall.
And capitalizing on quick wins.
Shared responsibility often. Steering Committee, relevant business execs making sure they're visible. Directing and monitoring the projects. Clearly, accountability A of the program leadership.
So the doing is distributed, but oversight, control, and accountability for delivery rest with program leadership. Successful execution needs both technical work and change management kept on track together.
Precisely. Broad involvement but central accountable direction is key to navigate challenges and keep it cohesive.
Connecting phase 5 back to you, the listener, this is the core doing phase. Putting the plan into action, managing the tech work, dealing with challenges, and critically, ensuring the people side is managed so improvements are actually adopted and used. It's where the vision starts becoming reality through hard work and support.
It's the heavy lifting to bridge the gap from current to target state.
Okay, implementation is happening or done. Now, phase 6, did we get there?
Phase 6. Absolutely crucial. Did the program actually deliver? Did it achieve its objectives and realize the intended benefits? The objective here is to integrate the project metrics and overall program benefit metrics into the regular performance measurement system. Monitor achievement continuously.
Verifying the results, not just completing tasks, but proving impact.
Exactly. This phase formally confirms if the desired outcomes, defined way back in phase 3, were actually achieved.
So the continual improvement tasks focus on operating and measuring.
Yes. CI is about establishing and running ongoing measurement, setting specific targets for the metrics defined earlier, which should link to the business case benefits, getting the actual measures, regularly maybe monthly gathering, reporting, comparing actuals against targets.
And investigating differences.
Yes, investigate significant variances. Why are we off? Develop and agree on corrective actions if needed. Maybe even adjust long-term targets based on reality. And critically, communicate all results, good and bad, to stakeholders, with recommendations for action.
Transparency is key. What about change enablement in phase 6? How do you know the change is truly stuck?
CE here is about embedding new approaches, vital for long-term success, ensuring the new ways of working become part of the culture, rooted in norms and values.
Making it permanent.
Right. Shaping behaviors through those revised job descriptions, performance criteria, incentive systems, KPIs, making sure they're actually used and reinforced. Monitoring if the new roles and responsibilities assigned for BAU have actually been picked up and are being performed effectively.
How do you quantify embedding beyond process metrics?
You track overall change progress and assess the effectiveness of the change plans themselves against the original objectives. The guide specifically says use both hard business measures, like adoption rates, error reduction, and perception measures, post-implementation surveys, feedback sessions. How do people feel about it now?
Combining data and perception.
Yes. Leveraging pockets of excellence areas where it worked really well is inspiration. Maintaining communication to highlight ongoing success. Ensuring open channels to resolve lingering issues, escalating if needed to enforce change, and documenting change enablement lessons learned.
That's thorough. Confirming human and cultural adoption. What about program management in phase 6?
PM focuses on realizing benefits and reviewing effectiveness, actively monitoring if the benefits promised in the business case are actually showing up, reviewing actual performance against those projections, conducting formal reviews, lessons learned from the program and projects, what went well, what didn't.
Learning for next time.
Exactly. Assessing overall program effectiveness against original objectives. Did we hit the target? And starting the process of getting stakeholder agreement to formally close the program or transition its ongoing activities smoothly into normal business operations.
Okay. Inputs. Implemented stuff from phase 5, quick win visibility, comms, BAU roles, logs, success measures, goals metrics, business case benefits, outputs, updated scorecards, dashboards, change effectiveness measures, business and perception, documented lessons learned, CI, CE, PM, a benefits realization report, and recommendations for follow-up.
That completes the measurement loop. A clear picture of what was achieved and learned.
And RCI for phase 6. Who is accountable for verifying success?
Activities like set targets, gather measures, embed new approaches, monitor role assumption, monitor benefits, review lessons learned. Accountability A tends to be distributed. INT governance board, program steering committee, business execs, IT management, depending on the task.
Embedding involves the operational folks.
Yes, embedding heavily involves business process owners and IT management as responsible for making it routine, with oversight from leadership. The insight is that accountability for success and making change stick is broad because real EJITE impacts everyone. Measurement and embedding aren't just the program team's job, They need ongoing commitment from leadership and line management.
So for you listening, phase 6 is crucial. Did you actually get there? Did the effort pay off? It moves beyond task completion to measuring impact and confirming adoption and value, using data and perception, reporting outcomes, identifying corrective actions.
It's the accountability phase, closing the loop, justifying the effort, and informing what comes next.
Which brings us to the final phase of this cycle, phase 7. How do we keep the momentum going?
Phase 7, ensuring sustainability and transitioning smoothly to the new business as usual. But it's a new BAU where continual improvement is embedded. The objective is sustainable transition, reviewing overall success, identifying further needs or opportunities, and reinforcing the need for ongoing focus.
And the guide suggests keeping these cycles relatively short, like 6 months.
Yeah, ideally. To maintain momentum, break down big transformations into manageable chunks, establish a rhythm of regular improvement cycles, not one giant program.
Makes sense. So continual improvement tasks here focus on planning and initiating further improvements.
Exactly. Confirming ongoing requirements are met in the new BAU. Actively identifying further opportunities, maybe revisiting pain points, maybe new ones have emerged, defining scope and objectives for the next improvement cycle, securing sponsorship and resources for that next cycle, and then planning and kicking it off, starting the whole life cycle again for the next priority.
Baking improvement into the process. What about change enablement in phase 7?
CE is simply about sustain, conscious ongoing reinforcement, maybe an ongoing communication campaign, celebrating successes, reminding people of benefits. Most importantly, demonstrated continuous top management commitment.
Leadership has to keep showing they care.
Absolutely. Confirm conformance to objectives. Monitor CE effectiveness and stakeholder buy-in over time. Implement corrective actions if things slip. Provide feedback, reward achievers, publicize successes, and share lessons learned broadly across the enterprise. Build that learning culture.
That ongoing commitment sounds vital. What about program management tasks in phase 7?
PM transitions to an operate focus, supporting the move to normal operations. Reviewing final program results, achievements, benefits realized against the case. Ensuring all responsibilities and activities are formally transitioned to BAU owners. Performing formal program closure or explicitly transitioning it to ongoing governance. And documenting and communicating overall program lessons learned and final results.
Okay. Inputs from phase 6. Scorecards, CE measures, lessons learned, benefits report, follow-up ideas. Outputs for phase 7. Recommendations for further EG activities feeding the next cycle. Maybe a stakeholder satisfaction survey, documented success stories, lessons learned, an ongoing communication plan for sustainment, and identified further opportunities.
That completes this iteration, feeding outcomes and lessons back into operations or the next cycle.
And RACI for phase 7. Who keeps the momentum going?
Activities like planning, initiating further improvements, and the overall sustained focus reinforcement, monitoring, correction, often show the board, executive management, or INT governance board as accountable A.
Top-down responsibility again.
For strategic direction and commitment, yes. IT management and business process owners are typically responsible for confirming ongoing needs, spotting operational opportunities, and ensuring day-to-day sustainment. Sharing lessons learned involves everyone, the insight. Phase 7 is about embedding the practice of governance, and that needs leadership accountability for making continual improvement standard operating procedure. It reinforces that sustainable improvement requires leadership commitment to embed it in the organizational DNA.
So listener, phase 7 isn't the end. It's the transition to a new business as usual, where improvements are sustained and continual improvement is baked in. Ensuring momentum leads to sustained value and prepares for the next round of improvements, establishing that rhythm.
Shifting the mindset from project completion to operational excellence and continuous adaptation.
All right, we have navigated the entire 7-phase implementation life cycle from Chapter 6. That was quite a structured journey. Now, let's switch gears slightly and look at Appendix A. It offers a different but really practical tool, an example decision matrix.
Right. This steps away from the phase process to offer a tool for clarifying who does what in specific governance situations. Appendix A gives an example decision matrix.
And its basic purpose.
To make those sometimes abstract ideas of roles and responsibilities concrete and actionable, it uses RACI responsible, accountable, consulted, informed to clarify roles for specific EGG decision topics and their scope. It helps visualize who needs to be involved in different types of INT governance decisions.
And the guide mentions this example is based on one from IT Winners.
Correct. It's illustrative, a template, a starting point. The guide is clear, Enterprises should develop their own matrix, tailored to their structure, culture, scope. But this example is valuable because it shows how to apply RACI to real EJ decisions and highlights typical role distributions.
And just a quick RACI recap. R does the work. A is ultimately answerable, approves only 1A. C provides input beforehand. I is kept updated afterward.
Exactly. Simple but powerful for clarifying who does what and who decides.
Let's walk through a few examples from the appendix matrix to make this concrete for you, the listener. Starting high level. Governance decisions.
Okay. For topics under governance, like integrating with enterprise governance, aligning INT with corporate governance, or establishing principles, structures, objectives for EJIT itself, the example consistently shows senior levels involved. The executive committee, the INT governance board, maybe even the full board, often share accountable A or high-level responsible R roles.
Others consulted or informed?
Yeah, IT management, business execs might be consulted C or informed.
That strongly reinforces what we saw in Phase 1. Fundamental governance responsibility sits right at the top. These aren't IT decisions, they're enterprise strategic choices.
Precisely. Top-down, setting the direction.
How about something more specific, like INT policies?
For policies, the matrix breaks it down, providing documentation, developing and rolling out policies, enforcing policies, developing and rolling out. IT management often shown as accountable A, but business process owners might be consulted C during development to ensure practicality. Employees are typically informed I. Enforcement is different.
How so?
IT management might be accountable A for ensuring enforcement mechanisms exist. But the day-to-day responsible roles for actually enforcing specific policies might sit with business process owners, IT operators, even employees, depending on the policy.
So policy creation is central, but enforcement responsibility is distributed to where the action happens. Effective policy needs embedding and enforcement across the business.
Exactly. It requires buy-in and action far beyond the policy writers.
Okay, what about INT-enabled investment and portfolio prioritization? Sounds critical.
Absolutely. Decisions like making effective investment decisions and forecasting and allocating budgets. The matrix example often shows a portfolio manager steering committee or similar body as accountable A for the investment decisions.
And who's consulted?
The executive committee, INT governance board, IT management, and crucially, business process owners are all typically listed as consulted. C. IT might be responsible or for providing cost feasibility data, but the decision needs broad input.
That clearly shows INT investment as a shared decision. Business leaders are heavily consulted before the decision. It treats INT as an enterprise investment, not just an IT cost.
That's the key. Ensuring investments align with business value requires structured business input into the decision process.
Makes sense. What about something more operational, like managing, monitoring, and evaluating SLAs, service-level agreements?
Right. Topics like identifying service requirements, what the business needs, agreeing on service levels, and monitoring achievement. Agreeing and monitoring. Often IT management is accountable, A, the provider, but identifying requirements. Business process owners are often responsible, R, or even accountable A. They know what they need.
So IT is consulted on requirements.
Usually consulted C or responsible R for helping define them technically, working with the business.
So even for operational SLAs, there's shared responsibility, especially defining the initial need. Effective service governance starts with the business articulating needs, not just IT saying what it can do.
Yes, it's a joint effort between provider and consumer, needing clear roles.
And one more, INT compliance, increasingly important.
Definitely. Compliance cuts across functions. Topics: identifying applicable laws regs, defining required compliance level, monitoring and reporting, accountable roles, often spread across the enterprise risk committee, IT management, risk compliance legal functions.
And business consulted.
Business process owners, typically consulted. C. Because regs impact their operations, employees might be informed. The insight: compliance is a cross-enterprise effort. Accountability is distributed. Correct. E.g. kite compliance needs full integration with broader enterprise compliance, requiring formal involvement from multiple departments.
So pulling it together, what's the main value of using a matrix like this?
The key takeaway is that it makes abstract roles concrete and actionable. By defining R, A, C, and I for specific decisions, strategy, investment, policy, compliance, operations, it underlines the guide's core message. Effective EJIT isn't passive or just IT's job. It needs active, defined, distributed participation across the entire business. It's a practical tool to clarify who needs to be involved, who decides, who does the work for better decisions.
Takes the theory of shared governance and gives you a tool to make it work in practice, decision by decision.
Exactly. A practical way to implement that end-to-end approach by clarifying accountability and collaboration.
Well, that was a really thorough and practical deep dive. We've walked through the entire 7-phase life cycle, from Chapter 6 of the COBIT 2019 Implementation Guide, that structured, iterative approach from drivers and team building, through execution and measurement, right up to sustaining continual improvement.
And we looked at Appendix A too, seeing how that example decision matrix acts as a vital practical tool, clarifying roles R, A, C, I for key decisions, making abstract concepts actionable.
It's clear this implementation journey is complex, needs real effort, but the guide provides that structured, manageable path. It really emphasizes needing a clear process, structured program management, dedicated change enablement for the human side, and those crucial, clearly defined roles distributed across the whole enterprise.
It really highlights that successful EGI is collaborative, enterprise-wide, and needs to be formally embedded in regular practices and decision-making.
So, as you, our listener, think about this deep dive in your own situation, consider that decision matrix example. How clearly defined are roles and responsibilities for critical INT decisions where you are right now? Do people really know who is accountable for INT investments? For policy approvals? For compliance? How might just clarifying who is accountable, responsible, consulted, and informed for those key decisions maybe transform the effectiveness of your INT governance and align IT better with the business?
Yeah, just taking a moment to reflect on that, maybe even sketching out a quick matrix for one or two key areas in your world. That could be a powerful starting point. Identifying where a structured approach, like the one in the COBIT Guide, might bring the most clarity and impact for you. It's all about making governance actually work in practice.